Chapter 1. A Young Girl with Big Dreams. On a chilly autumn day, November 22nd, 1744, in Weymouth, Massachusetts, a baby girl was born into the Smith family. They named her Abigail, unaware that she would one day influence the very foundations of a new nation. Abigail Smith grew up in a well-respected family. Her father, Reverend William Smith, was a minister, and her mother, Elizabeth Quincy Smith, came from a distinguished political family. Though girls in the 18th century received little formal education, Abigail's parents valued learning and encouraged her curiosity. With access to her father's extensive library, Abigail developed a deep love for reading. She devoured books on philosophy, history, and politics, sharpening her mind far beyond what was expected of women at the time. She often debated ideas with her family, showing early signs of the intellect that would later shape the future of America. Chapter 2. Love and Partnership. As Abigail grew into a young woman, she caught the attention of a rising lawyer, John Adams. Though he was 5 years older than her, John was captivated by her intelligence and quick wit. Their letters were filled with discussions on politics, justice, and philosophy, an unusual but powerful foundation for a relationship in those times. In 1764, at the age of 20, Abigail married John Adams. Their marriage was not just built on love, but on mutual respect and intellectual companionship. They settled in Braintree, Massachusetts, where John pursued his legal career, while Abigail managed their home. As the years passed, their family grew. Abigail gave birth to 6 children, including John Quincy Adams, who would later become the 6th President of the United States. Though life as a mother and wife demanded much of her time, Abigail continued to educate herself, staying informed about political events. Chapter 3. A Time of Revolution. By the early 1770s, tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain were escalating. John Adams became deeply involved in the revolutionary movement, and Abigail stood by his side, offering wisdom and guidance. When John traveled frequently for political meetings, Abigail managed their farm, raised their children, and corresponded with him through letters. These letters became a historical treasure, revealing Abigail's sharp political insight and deep concerns for the future of the colonies. During the Second Continental Congress in 1776, Abigail famously wrote to John, urging him to remember the ladies as the founding fathers drafted new laws for the country. She warned that if women's rights were not acknowledged, they might foment a rebellion. Though John playfully dismissed her words at the time, her sentiments foreshadowed the future fight for women's equality. Chapter 4. The War Years and Sacrifices. The American Revolution brought great hardship. John Adams was sent to France in 1778 to secure foreign support, leaving Abigail alone to care for their home and children. She faced food shortages, disease outbreaks, and the constant fear of British invasion. Despite these struggles, Abigail remained strong. She ran the household like a business, making critical decisions in John's absence. She also assisted in the war effort by making bullets from melted household items and sewing uniforms for soldiers. Her letters to John provided a first-hand account of the war's toll on civilians. She described the suffering of families, the sacrifices of soldiers, and the resilience of American women who kept farms and businesses running while their husbands fought for independence. Chapter 5. The Birth of a Nation. When the war ended in 1783, John Adams was sent to Europe to negotiate the peace treaty. Abigail eventually joined him in Paris, where she met European leaders and observed the stark differences between American and European societies. She then traveled with John to London, where he served as the first U.S. minister to Britain. There, Abigail met King George III, an ironic moment given that her husband had fought to free America from British rule. Though she remained diplomatic, Abigail was unimpressed by the aristocracy and longed to return home. In 1788, after years of service abroad, the Adams family returned to the newly formed United States of America. John was elected as the country's first vice president under George Washington, and Abigail took on new responsibilities as a political wife. Chapter 6. First Lady of the Nation. In 1796, John Adams was elected the second President of the United States, making Abigail the First Lady. Unlike Martha Washington, who preferred to stay out of politics, Abigail actively advised her husband on national affairs. She was unafraid to express her opinions on democracy, governance, and human rights. She strongly opposed slavery and believed in equal education for boys and girls. In many ways, she was America's first unofficial advocate for women's rights. However, John's presidency was marked by turmoil. The country was on the brink of war with France, and the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts sparked public outrage. Abigail supported John's decisions, but she also faced heavy criticism. Many labeled her Mrs. President because of her influence over policy matters. Despite the challenges, Abigail remained steadfast. She saw herself not just as the president's wife, but as a guardian of American ideals. Chapter 7. A Quiet Retirement. In 1800, John Adams lost re-election to Thomas Jefferson, and the Adams family left the presidential mansion, which would later become the White House. Abigail was relieved to return to their home in Quincy, Massachusetts, where she hoped for a peaceful retirement. However, life had more trials in store. In 1801, their son Charles died of alcoholism, a heartbreaking loss for Abigail. Yet she found solace in her family, especially in her son John Quincy Adams, who was rising in politics. Though she was no longer in the public eye, Abigail continued to write letters discussing politics, women's rights, and the importance of morality and leadership. She remained a political thinker until her last days. Chapter 8. The Final Years and Legacy. On October 28, 1818, at the age of 73, Abigail Adams passed away from typhoid fever. Her husband, John, was devastated but lived on for 8 more years, famously uttering Abigail as one of his last words before his own passing in 1826. Abigail's legacy lived on through her letters, which provided an invaluable perspective on early American history. More importantly, she paved the way for women to demand a greater role in society. Her words, "Remember the ladies," echoed through history, influencing future movements for women's rights. She may not have lived to see women gain the right to vote, but her vision helped shape the path toward gender equality. Epilogue. A woman ahead of her time. Abigail Adams was not just the wife of a president. She was a visionary, a patriot, and a fighter for justice. She believed that democracy should include everyone, regardless of gender. Today, her legacy continues to inspire those who seek equality, education, and a better future. She was truly a woman ahead of her time, a leader in an era when women were expected to remain silent. But Abigail Adams refused to be silent. She used her words, her intellect, and her courage to shape a new nation, one letter at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next video.